Alrighty, hello everyone. Welcome to the Mind, Body, Spirit Virtual Summit. Today I'm very excited to have our guest, my dear friend, Mindy Mackenzie. So I'm going to introduce you guys to her, read you a little bit about her, and then we'll get started with questions. So Mindy Mackenzie, or the Velvet Hammer as she was known during her days at liquor giant Jim Beam, is currently a sought-after speaker and managing director and chief performance officer at arguably the most prestigious private equity firm in the world, the Carlyle Group. She advises CEOs and intervenes to fix and accelerate performance at organizations around the globe. She is also the host of the much anticipated You First and Integrative Leadership Summit, which has been designed and curated for only 15 women of influence. The upcoming summit is being held at the luxurious 5-star Hotel The Little Nell in Aspen, Colorado. And I've got to say, I feel especially honored to be collaborating with Mindy on this summit, and I'll be there too. And there are only a couple of spots left, so check it out at mindymackenzie.com/summit. We'll also leave that link and all the information after this interview so you can access it. Prior to her current role, she advised Fortune 500 companies through her own firm, along with serving as a senior advisor at Mackenzie & Company. She earned her corporate leadership stripes at 3 stellar firms with over 20 years of experience at Walmart, Campbell Soup Company, and Jim Beam. Most notably for this audience, she is the author of the 2016 Wall Street Journal bestseller, The Courage Solution: The Power of Truth-Telling with Your Boss, Peers, and Team, which I think is a must-read for any business professional, and I highly recommend that you guys buy it. And of course, we'll leave all that information below as well. Mindy has an extensive background in international markets, consumer packaged goods, manufacturing, distribution, transportation, M&A, change management, technology, and all aspects of human capital and leadership performance. For more information, please refer to her website at mindymackenzie.com. All right, welcome, Mindy.
Hi, Ab. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So to start off, I love our listeners to, of course, we, read all your professional bio stuff, but to get to know a little bit more about you. So I love to know your story. How did you start in the corporate world and what got you to where you are now? Briefly. I know that could be like 10 hours.
I know. No. It was a total fluke. I was actually trained as a marriage and family therapist, and I specialized in the brief family systems modality. And so I'd spent 3 years in clinical work, and then through this crazy story, ended up as a personnel manager 25 years ago at Walmart, which is crazy, and discovered that I loved business. And so the irony, Ab, as I think about my life and career, is that I occasionally will guest lecture at Kellogg and at Northwestern, and it cracks me up because when I do that with 2 executives and MBA students, I've never had a business class in my life, and yet my whole career has been about business and how to optimize your performance. But the more important story is not about my career, but about, I think, my personal life and the love of my life, my son, Noah. And I was a single mom for the majority of his life. He's 15 years old now. My husband at the time left when I was 4 months pregnant. And so I had the opportunity, and I mean that actually, to be a single mom, raise my son, and climb the corporate ladder at the same time, which is where a lot of the holistic principles and wellness principles came to play in my life. Because to be able to do that, I needed a lot of support from people like you and the beautiful people in the Mind, Body, Spirit squad. So anyways, yeah.
Nice.
Now I'm happily married. So I got married last year.
Right.
So,
of course.
So that's a new thing. But yeah, that's my life.
Awesome. And so you're with Noah, you're growing, climbing the corporate ladder, doing all of that. At what point did more holistic living, like looking at the mind, body, spirit balance, come into play?
Was when I moved from, really truly when I moved from Arkansas, when I was at Walmart's headquarters, and I took the job at Campbell Soup. And I still kept up my clinical licenses as I moved in counseling, because, Abby, I kept thinking every year I kept thinking, I'm done with corporate, I'm going back to be a therapist,
right.
whatever. So you have to keep your credits up, as you know, as any health practitioner. And so I went to this to this weekend seminar in New Jersey, and I came across deeply this protocol called neuro-emotional technique. And I had a little experience with it before, but this is where I kind of went in and I thought I tried to get trained in it and all of this stuff. And that particular modality, alternative modality, probably really changed the trajectory of my life.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And so how, like from that point forward and currently, do you apply these holistic principles to your work in corporate America? Like I know personally, you know, you live a healthy lifestyle, do all that stuff, but how does it apply to your career?
Well, I look at it as completely integrated because you've heard the term like the corporate athlete. It's really easy to say that, but it's actually very, very true. And I have a saying where I tell people when I advise CEOs that even Ferraris need an oil change, right? Mm-hmm. And that oil change can be everything from an unplugged vacation where you're really like stepping away from your day to day and unplugging from all the technology and the connection to kind of go back within. And that means for me, making sure that I'm getting my massages and getting treated by you. I happen to be very lucky because we live in the same community. And so I have the best doctor in the world. And I can manage my health from a preventative way. But I say that applies to my corporate life because I would not be able to sustain my performance if I wasn't super conscious, not just about the sleep and the rest, but doing things productively to help my my body and my energy, because I'm on planes all the time and, the plane lands and you have to perform and you have to go help people. And if you're dragging or if you're not at your best, you're not able to do what you're meant to do, whatever your job is. And so I'm a huge proponent, and I don't see it as an either or. I see it as completely integrated into your life.
Yes. And I love that so much because I share that with my patients all the time as well. I mean, forget even just the corporate athlete. It's really, no matter who you are, I have moms with like 3 young kids. I'm like, you're an athlete. Mm-hmm. And they're like, what? It's like, I think my favorite example, I believe I've spoken on this on another interview too, is look at Tom Brady, right? He's like the oldest player in the NFL, but like arguably the best. Why? Yep. Because he does this stuff. He takes care of himself so well. So it's really like no matter what you do, mom, corporate, doctor, in school, a student, right? Teenagers. If you want to perform better than everyone else, you kind of have to do the stuff nobody else is doing, which is taking care of yourself in that way.
It's so funny that you bring this up, Ab, because I was with my brother the last couple of days, and he brought up Tom Brady, and he was saying, okay, Tom Brady and I are the exact same age. Right. And he's like, there's a dramatic difference in Tom Brady's life. And we were talking water consumption, like how much water per day. And apparently when he showed the world like everything he ate and how much water, he got like completely all the shade thrown on him by all haters about the water. And Matthew and I were joking. We're like, well, let's see. Exhibit A is Tom Brady and what he looks like. Right. And Exhibit B is all y'all losers out there, right? So keep drinking your Diet Coke. But I'm telling you, Tom Brady.
I love to see all those guys like throw a football. Well,
yeah, exactly.
Totally. Well, I know when all that stuff came out, of course, in the field I am, like, we got tons of questions about that. And there was a lot of buzz because he even talked about how he sees a chiropractor and acupuncturist and all that stuff. And, there's all the people that are like, the evidence doesn't show that his diet, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, who cares about the evidence? Look at the results. Like, people half his age are injured messes and can't perform. So it's awesome. Okay, so now I want to know, like, how has having this holistic mindset helped you advance in your career?
I think because any times, Abby, I have been more mindful of, I call it heart, mind, body, spirit, and maybe we can talk about that in a little bit, but the more in balance and harmony I've been across all vectors, the more impactful I've been at work and the more able I've been to really do my best work. And when you're, working, I do work hard, I work a lot, but when the machine's working and everything's kind of online, that is is a contrast to the people that I see at work who celebrate no sleep and,
Right.
they take all these shortcuts and they feel like crap. And then they wonder why they lack emotional management and they have outbursts and all this stuff. And so I think part of my success has been this attention to, and I haven't always, it's been a journey for me. I mean, I've been a hot mess, right? So I've had a lot to learn and change, and I haven't gotten it right for sure. And I was heavy for a long time in my career post Noah and used every excuse in the book for why I was still carrying 30, 40 extra pounds. And so I've got all of those, experiences.
Right,
so I've been this perfect little pumpkin, going through my career.
Right.
But I know for a fact that my performance and my impact of my performance is so much higher when I'm in tune and kind of on fire. And I do think that has impacted. The other thing I would say is that I find that people who are more in tune about their mind, body, spirit connection tend to be able to tap into their higher wisdom more often. And I have definitely seen that. The more I've meditated, the more I've had consistent spiritual practices, that has transformed my life, and it has definitely transformed the impact that I have on other people.
Absolutely. And so I want to delve a little bit deeper with that as to what are your daily practices that help you stay in that balanced, integrative, plugged in space.
Well, right before I did this, I just for all you listeners out there, I texted Abby and was like, can we start like 50 minutes later because I have to go meditate? I couldn't imagine. And this is really crazy, but for now, this is normal for me. I couldn't imagine sitting and doing this, having this conversation with you without actually stepping back, shifting gears and getting quiet in myself. And so yes, my daily practice is to meditate wherever I am, whether it's in a hotel room somewhere around the world or if it's at home. And I carry crystals around and I, do all sorts of different things so that I can keep myself anchored. And what I find is the days that I do my meditation, Abby, like even if it's 10 minutes,
right.
And I have found that the more I do it, the more I really crave longer times. Like in a perfect world, I have an hour of quiet time in the morning,
right.
Monday through Friday, getting my son off to school and doing everything. I actually shoot for 30 minutes and the weekends tend to be longer. But that for me is my routine. I get up, I brush my teeth, I go down to the library, I meditate and read and get quiet and breathe. I'm working on my breathing. So, and then my day starts out great. And a lot of times when I'm traveling, I don't know if any of your listeners travel a lot for work, but I have guided meditations and stuff that I listen to. Like, so on the airplane, like during boarding, which you really can't do much except for stare at people and judge them as they get on the plane.
It's perfect practice to stop judging.
Right? Instead, I put my earphones in and I listen to a podcast or a guided meditation or something that's not about work or about the crazy mass of humanity that's boarding the plane. And then I feel really good because even if that's a half hour, it totally takes me to a better place.
Totally. I love that. So you talked about heart, mind, body, spirit, and obviously I'm going to ask you about the life scale, which is referenced in your book. So I'd love for you to introduce our listeners to that concept and what that's all about.
Sure. I wish I had been smart enough to be the one, Abby, to have come up with this, but actually it was my coach in Australia. A quick story, when I moved there from New Jersey, I was the first single parent executive in Campbell Soup's 150-year history that they'd expatted. So I moved from New Jersey to Sydney, Australia with my son. And he was 3 or 4 at the time, 4 years old. And I start this new job. And at this new job, I'm the only female on the executive team, which has been true my whole career. Only female on the executive team. I was from corporate, which everybody hates the people from corporate. And I was the HR person. So it was like the triple threat of death, right? Nobody likes that. And I felt all this performance pressure to be perfect. And my new boss, has said, hey, there's this really cool guy that I meet for coffee every month. His name's Michael. I think you'd enjoy meeting with him. And it was fantastic. So he connected me to Michael. And I was probably a couple months into the job, and I sat down at this coffee shop in sunny Sydney on this, I don't know, it was like a Tuesday morning or something random. And he's like, "How are you doing?" And I went, bleh, told him all this stuff. How much pressure I was feeling. It wasn't that, graceful about it. And he's like, I've got a tool for you to consider. And his was a bit more complicated, and I've simplified it down. But that was about almost 10 years ago, Abby. Mm-hmm. And that tool that he shared with me has morphed into what I call the life scale today, which is you essentially, and this can take 3 minutes, and I do this with corporate groups all the time. We could do it right here, right now, but your listeners can push pause. But essentially, right. There's 3 easy steps. You can write on a piece of paper on your phone, heart, mind, body, spirit. Heart is all your love, relationships, romance, friendships, anybody who fills up your heart and soul. Mind is where your job sits. So all your relationships on the job, boss, colleagues, customers, clients. And then it's any of your intellectual pursuits. Body is the machine that we've been talking about. And then spirit is your soul connection, religion, community service, time and nature, all of that. So you just put heart, mind, body, spirit on a piece of paper, and you set a timer for a minute. And you write down in each of the quadrants in the first minute what's working right now in your life. And you do that, and no judging, right? Because there's sometimes that there's like nothing working in one of the quadrants. And totally okay. Right. And then when timer goes off, you stop writing, and then you set it for another minute, and then you write what's missing or what's not working in each of the quadrants. And then the final minute is to step back and reflect on what you've written and to choose one thing. And this is where really probably like your listeners, people who have paid to like learn and listen to all these interviews and come away are probably fairly successful, all about personal growth and high achieving people. And my counsel to all of you is you get to pick one thing. You don't get to pick 3 things. You get to pick one thing. So you pick one quadrant, and then within that quadrant, you pick one thing that you can do for the next 30 days that would fill your bucket up in that area. And for me, that first time when I was sitting there with Michael, I chose to focus on making friends, local friends, because I loved my new job. Mm-hmm. And Noah, my heart quadrant, was great, and our relationship was great. But I had the spirit quadrant was completely empty. If you'd have told me to meditate back then, Abby, I would have laughed at you. Right. I'd been like, what? And then the aspect of the heart quadrant that was off balance was no friends. I had no friends. Right. So that's what I focused on. But the idea here is that you don't have to journal. You don't have to judge. You don't do anything. You just choose one thing. You do your best to stay mindful and do something like that. And it's like giving yourself a gift. And then 30 days, you do it again. You only step on the life scale once a month for 3 minutes, and you can do it anywhere. And it's amazing. Usually people cry.
I'm sure.
When you do it, because like you're looking in the mirror of your life. And it does take some courage for you to do this, kind of stare into the abyss and tell the truth.
But I love how simple it is. Like you said, we don't need to journal about it for 30 minutes. You don't have to think about it for more than a minute, because it's all just about what's up on the screen for you in that moment and what's one simple thing you can do to help improve it. I think we overcomplicate things so many times. You know, we talk about this all the time. Like, we go to the dark and twisty place of like, I gotta sludge through this and fix everything right now. And that's just not even possible.
No, it's not. And what's fascinating about this is that it resonates to everyone because it puts you back in the driver's seat of your life. And I think that's one of the most important principles to remember, is that the only thing we can reliably change or control in our life is ourselves. And I say that to people in the corporate world all the time when they complain, whether it's a CEO or anybody. Well, my boss sucks, or my colleagues are terrible, or like when, you talk to your friends and they're like, oh, my husband is a jerk, or my kids are annoying. And you're like, okay, that may be true, but it doesn't change the fact that you can't change them. You can only change yourself. And change is an inside-out job, as we both know.
Yeah, totally. So I'm really interested to hear, like, you go on this journey, you start the life scale thing, you're starting to incorporate more holistic principles into your life. Then you get back to Chicago. Like, how has your colleagues and the companies you've worked for responded to your in my mind, unique view.
Yeah.
And, you know, integrating all this holistic stuff into the corporate world.
Well, it's interesting because in New Jersey, before I moved to Australia, I watched the documentary The Secret. So I don't know if any of the listeners have did that, like, I don't know, it was 10, 15 years ago.
Yep.
It just lit my world up. And so the Marie Diamond did the feng shui thing. And I remember watching her on The Secret going, oh my God, I don't know what feng shui is, but I got to learn about it. And so I ended up like buying her course, and I go through her whole course. I feng shui my entire life, my house in Jersey, the whole thing. And then I feng shui my office at Campbell Soup. And what people would say is coming in to my office, oh, your office feels really good, Mindy. Like, what's the deal? And I'd be like, I feng shuied it. So, of course, I couldn't just be cool about it. I would be like, I feng shuied it. And it got to the point that people asked me to come feng shui their offices. So I became known, like, at Campbell's as a person. And they're like, oh, Mindy can come and kind of rearrange your office and tell you what to do so it feels really feel better in there. And so crazy. And then stuff like that has happened my whole career because I tend to, like, bring it all to work. Like, when people ask me, you know, how can you do what you do, or what's the secret to your, I tell them the truth. I say, I pray before I speak, or I meditate, or I feng shui my life, or I go to see an AK doc and I get, you know, preventive treatment, or, you know, whatever it is. And so I think part of it is just being really honest with people when they say, what's working for you? And equally, I'm very honest about where I'm a hot mess and where I'm completely in the head. Excuse my French, which was bad. No, sorry.
You're fine. There's no kids.
I hope
this,
I'm not.
So
okay, good.
People are offended. Oh well.
Yeah. All right.
But I know in the past too, you've brought like people that do neuroemotional technique into your team. Yeah. Like, how did that go down? Were people like, what are you doing? Like, you're crazy?
Well, when you're the boss, you can pretty much do, there's a latitude for what you get away with, I think. Here's the other, yes, I did bring NET in and did group NET with one of the teams that I led, and I think it changed their lives, candidly. And I've also recommended for people that work for me, I had one colleague who absolutely loved her, and she was really struggling. And I was like, hey, let me tell you about this alternative doctor that I see, and I highly recommend this person. It's none of my business. You know, you have to be really careful. But so here's the information if you want to avail yourself of that.
Like, I found this helpful, and you might too.
Exactly. So, yeah. I think the other thing, too, though, is the way I treat my colleagues and the people that work for me and that I work for, but I definitely treat them as whole people. And so I get to know them, like, their whole life, like what's going on in their life and what are their dreams and aspirations and how are they seen and how does work fit into all of that. And when you are engaging with people from that perspective, then there's a safe space because they also know that stuff about you. So when they ask you, or you say, I'd like to do a team building, we're going to do something a little different and weird, but I think it could help our team because we're stuck and struggling over here. People are going to be know, Mindy might be a little woo-woo, but, you know, our team, you know, kicks ass. And I know she is doing this for our highest and best, even if they wouldn't language it that way. Because people sense intent. We sense intent. So, but I don't push it. And I think probably like the feng shui thing, I was like so excited about it. I probably talked about it too much. Nowadays, I'm much more just responsive. I don't kind of lead, go, oh, I found the solution. Everybody their offices, right? I don't do that.
Now you're more just like who you are, and if it comes up, it comes up.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, I feel like part of that really knowing people as a whole person, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like part of that comes from your background in therapy.
Yeah, I can't tell if it's me or if it's that training or
is there part of you like you're the type of person you want to like dig in and really know people and like what makes them tick and what they're all about?
Yes, and I have been that way my whole life.
Like you love that.
Yeah. I can't stand superficial cocktail conversation. It takes a ton of energy for me to go to a work event and be surrounded by people and have to make small talk, it exhausts me. I want to dig in and like get to know the person. Like, why do they do what they do? How are they wired? What's the family they're part of now? You know, who are they? Because I like to have meaningful conversations. So probably, there's but it's not coming from a place that I want to psychologize them.
Right.
There's times that I'm doing that, but it's a lot of it's just curiosity, so that I can kind of get to know who they are and what matters to them. And then I find that when you have those conversations and then you have to work through tough stuff on the job, you've got goodwill. Like you have a sense of this person, and it's easier versus it feeling transactional.
But I feel like that also translates into your career success a bit too, because you have these deep connections with people. You really know how they work with others, what type of support they need. And that's why you're able to go into these companies and help them where maybe other people weren't, because you want that deep connection and it's not just superficial.
Yeah, I think a lot of it though, Ab, is the questions that I ask. And again, intent. You can always sense when somebody's asking something and not being sincere. But a lot of times I get parachuted into these companies that are struggling, and here I come. And no matter what lipstick we put on that pig, they know I'm coming because to improve. So, and it's my job. I see it as my job, at least, to make it safe. And I actually do this, my job is to first do no harm, which is, a riff on the medical profession. But I think that's true, that whatever I do, however I engage with these people, that it is definitely not harmful, but beneficial for them. But I do ask broader questions about who they are, where they come from, how did they get to where they are today? How do they see the situation? And when you ask questions like that and really just listen, you pull out threads and patterns, and behavior then makes sense in the context that is provided. And I think that's super important. And that's one of the reasons why then people tell me like all their deep, dark secrets. Or tell me all the deep, dark secrets about what's going on in the company. And then I go back to my colleagues, my investment professionals, in this case, the Carlisle Group, and they're like, how did you find that out? And I was like, well, I asked, but it's not quite that simple. It's how you ask, what you're asking, and the intent with which you're asking. And then when people say, well, is this confidential? You have to be honest. If it's not going to be, you go, sorry, mate, no. Or this aspect can be, I won't attribute that comment to you, but the themes, will be shared. So again, it's a lot about transparency and being really honest with people. And when you do that, people are like all in.
Right. Sure. So I love to know, with all of your experience in corporate America, what are a couple of mistakes you've made professionally that you would like advise other people to avoid? I know.
Oh my God. Okay. So, this is not a question I was ready for. Which ones to choose? There's so many. Oh, okay. So the first thing that flashed into mind is I made a lot of mistakes early in my career, being really undisciplined in how I expressed my intensity. And when I first led a team, and this was at Walmart, I did things like raise my voice. I've only pounded a table once, but I pounded a table. Like what the? It's textbook things not to do.
Right.
And I think the other mistakes I made early on was not trusting people, the ability for people to handle the truth. And a lot of my mistakes in my career, and then what I saw other people doing, is what led me to write the book, because I wanted to short circuit and have people not make those same mistakes. But I'd say the biggest one for me was not managing myself appropriately. The other thing for me, and I got this feedback a lot, was not bringing people along. And so, because I was so fast and I was like, about the results, but it was too much of a good thing. And when you're leading, you have to bring people along. And that means you have to meet them where they're at and communicate to them in a way that they can hear and then follow along with pace. And I didn't know how to do that, right? And so I got a lot of feedback around, Mindy, yeah, you're great, you get a bunch of stuff done, but there's these dead bodies in your wake, and like they're not, the key to great leadership is for people to want to follow, and like you got a crew that's with you, and that was really hard for me at the beginning, Ab, because I was like, what do you mean? Like, I've got the best intent. I'm working so hard. I'm working 18 hours a day, all that jazz. Versus, relaxing and really listening and understanding that it wasn't about me. It was about, I had to shift how I was. What I see most is that we are who we are. It is our strengths taken to an extreme that can be too much of a good thing. And whatever that is. So for the introvert, it's being too recessive and not speaking up and not stretching to actually contribute and share without being prompted. And for someone like me, who is much more fiery and high energy and, going, is to slow down, zip the lip, and, listen and bring people along. And so I don't know if that.
Totally.
There's so many, Abby.
But I like what you said about like too much of a good thing. It's all about being in balance, right? Everyone has their personality traits and their extremes, and everyone knows when you're out of balance how you get to that extreme place. Yep. And that's when most people crash, right? So it's all, it's not bad to be super extroverted. It's not bad to be introverted or have any of those qualities, but to find balance with it.
That's exactly right. And manage yourself for the situation and all of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're going to segue into your book.
Okay.
So you kind of talked about what inspired it, but at what point, like, how did you know now is the time where I need to write this book?
Well, when I started in 2015, it published in 2016, I felt like there was an absolute crisis in the corporate world. Absolute crisis. And the crisis in my experience, and it continues to this day, is that what companies and organizations and individuals need most, they often get the least. And that's truth. And what gets in the way of people telling the truth and getting the facts on the table in an efficient manner is people's fear of consequences. And so here's a perfect example of this. And the irony of this is, once I left my big corporate jobs, and now I'm back in one, but spent a couple of years advising and worked at Mackenzie as well. Advising is companies will hire consultants and spend millions of dollars, Abby, to have consultants come in and tell them what their organization already knows. Because people are fundamentally afraid of telling the truth. And the environment of the organization is not one that invites truth-telling. Right. And I do think it's an epidemic in corporate America today. And frankly, in all Western societies and businesses.
Totally. I mean, I can say I've read your book a couple of times, and I'm not in corporate America at all, but over 90% of it, I would say, applied to me too. So, I mean, I would say anyone can read it because it's about the importance of telling the truth.
And doing it in a way that can be heard. Mm-hmm. And that's where the courage comes in, because it's not about, just dropping Molotov cocktails on people, on your boss or your colleagues or your clients. It's about knowing yourself well enough to be able to manage yourself and then reframe the relationships, the critical relationships you have on the job, so that you can deliver challenging messages at challenging times and be heard, so that people can act on that. That's the art of it. And that takes a different heart-centered approach. Your intent has to be different. And that's why the whole beginning, the first section, because the book is, as you know, is in 4 sections, because I call it the People magazine of business leadership books. I mean it because it's so easy to read. Right. It's not that academic or complicated.
But I love that about it, because I'll also say, you guys, this book is funny. I laughed out loud several times reading it.
Well, because all the stupid shitty things. So.
And I know you too, so it's that much funnier. But I mean, it's a very easy read, but with tons of actionable steps. And that's what I love about it. It's not just reading these concepts and you don't know what to do with it. You give people stuff to do, which is the best.
Well, there's a lot of that stuff. The majority of it, that what I share in there is not stuff that I came up with, Abby. It is stuff like the life scale or the personal. There's so many practical things that I'm blessed to use and see the amazing impact of that. And I wanted to share all of the things I think are like game changers in your professional life, that are simple on the face of it, but can be challenging to do in the moment. It's easier to avoid. It's easier. It's like health, right? It's easier to avoid when, you have that feeling that something's wrong with your body. You hear that all the time. Like people get diagnosed with some horrible thing and they go, yeah, I've been feeling kind of funky for the last 9 months or a year. But they never faced into it. I think it's kind of the same thing.
Totally. So how long did you know you wanted to write a book before you actually did?
I didn't. I am not one of those people. There's some weird statistic, at least in North America, like 60% of people think they have like the great American novel in them. And like I would be in the 40%. I had no desire to write a book. But I was guest lecturing. It was in 2013. And Hair on Fire, and I raced over to Kellogg and I was guest lecturing over there and doing this thing and with this group of executives and CEOs. And I have this file full of all these papers and stuff. And I went in, I was sharing some stuff. And when it was over, the CEO came up to me and said, hey, I'd like your book. And I thought they were joking. I was like, what? And they're like, no, what's the name of your book? And I was like, what are you talking about? Well, the book that has all the stuff that you just talked about. And I was like, oh, I don't have a book. And he was like, you need to write a book, right? So that kind of was the spark. And then there were enough kind of little signs of like people asking for things. And as I gave speeches and stuff like that, people would say, oh, that would be really helpful. And so I went to a seminar on how to write a book.
Right.
Because I didn't know.
Right.
So, and it was actually fantastic. I'm a big fan of like Googling, how to, if you don't know what you're doing and figure it out. And so I went to a 3-day seminar and, it was excellent, actually. And there were 12 aspiring authors in there, and these 4 best-selling authors, New York Times best-selling authors, put this on, and they kind of demystified the publishing world, and then they demystified the book writing world, and they shared like a couple different ways, if you want to write a book, how to do it. And there was one methodology that really worked for me, and so that's what I did. And I'm thankful. I really didn't know how difficult publishing a book would be, and I was ignorant because I don't know.
Went in blind.
I did. Yeah. I went in completely ignorant, and it was probably helpful.
Right. How long did it take you to write the book, start to finish? Not editing, just like writing it.
It took me 6 weeks.
That's awesome.
So, okay, and so here's the really crazy part about that. And that was, okay, wait. 2 weeks longer than I wanted because I'd set the goal in the month of June of 2015 I was going to write the book, and I did this whole thing and one week for each section of the book, and I had my system and everything, and it took 2 weeks longer, and I felt like a failure. I did it. I was like, oh man, loser. I couldn't get it done in the 4 weeks. And then I was just yesterday listening to a podcast by Tim Ferriss, and they were talking about how if you write 3 hours a day or whatever, by the end of the year, you'll have a book.
Right.
And I was like, I need to talk to Tim Ferriss because he's like the 4-hour work week guy. He needs to know this whole method for writing a book. Yeah. So yeah, it was, that part wasn't the hard part. The hard part was everything else around getting a book published was just brutal. But the actual writing of it wasn't hard for me.
Right. That's awesome. So I'm going to do a spoiler alert because I'm assuming now you've gotten the itch and you've got a couple more books in the pipeline. Eventually.
Yes.
At some point in time.
Yes, and I've been told by several people in the voodoo world that, oh, you're going to, author a few more books. But yeah, I do know now that I have not told my husband and son that that is going to happen to them.
Well, here we are. Yeah. They listen to the interview.
That's right.
Stay tuned.
Right.
So what would your advice, like a couple of pieces of advice, be for people? There might be some people listening who think they want to publish a book.
First of all, I would say do it, because if you have an idea or something that you want to share and it's coming from the intent that you want to help somebody else out, there is no barrier now to being able to get a book out. And the publishing industry, Abby, has changed so much, and it is so like friendly to self-publishing or hybrid publishing models, and there's so much more information out there. So I'm a huge fan, and people can do it now. They don't have to go a more traditional route, and I did a hybrid route. But you can do print on demand, do all sorts of things that
right.
So I'm a big fan. I think, yes, people should do it.
Totally. Awesome. And okay, so we're going to segue into some more fun, personal like questions. So I've asked everyone this. I kind of copied Tim Ferriss on this one, but I want to know what your morning routine is. If you have a morning routine.
I do have a morning routine. Beyond what I said, more specific than what I said before, like I get up. So I set my alarm at 5:30. And the reason for 5:30 is I look at 5:30 to like 6:45 is me time, mm-hmm. and 6:45 to 8 is me being a mother to my son, because mm-hmm. he's by 7:45 or 8. This is when I'm home.
Right.
And so I get up. I usually brush my teeth, and then I go right down to the library, and I might make myself a pot of tea, depending, but I can get distracted. I'm highly distractible.
Right.
So I try to get in, and then I literally takes me like 5 to 7 to 10 minutes to kind of get my environment set in my library. Like, am I going to sit on my meditation cushion, or going to sit in the chair? Am I lighting a candle? Am I doing anything with crystals? I do all this crazy shit. But I'm waking up. And then I sit there and meditate. I'll read, pray, do whatever, sit in silence, try to breathe, do my breathing exercise. I make that face because I find that really hard. And then I try to hang out in there. Invariably, then my husband, when he leaves for work, he then comes and bangs on the library door and interrupts. And then I say goodbye to him, and he goes off and leaves. And then I take a shower and put some spackle on, and I'm down. I try to be down in the kitchen no later than 7. And then I'm cooking breakfast for my son, making my bulletproof coffee, which I do that 2 or 3 times a week, which I love, thanks to you. And then I take my son to school, and then it's off to the races for me. So if I am home working in Chicago, then I am on conference calls and meetings and working then, and I work all day. But that's my morning routine. It's not that sexy.
I like it. I mean, so what does your routine look like in a hotel room? God knows where.
Yeah, so it depends on what time I flew in the night before, because I will prioritize sleep over anything. And because that is one thing that I have learned for me. But I have rituals that I do. So it's not necessarily, it depends, but I take like salt baths. So I will be going to the CVS or Walgreens and finding salt to try to have, and everybody's like, ew, like you take baths in hotels and everything. And I'm like, yep, I do. I just don't care.
Bless the water. Who cares? Yeah,
exactly. So I will take a salt bath, and then I definitely, though, typically will spend at least 10 or 15 minutes sitting up on the bed with my earphones in, because I have a harder time meditating without my earphones in when I'm in a hotel because of all the noises, and doing deep breathing and doing affirmations or meditating. I definitely... It'll be a rare day, Ab, when I'm on the road, when I'm not spending at least 10 or 15 minutes. But I have found that if I take a bath first, then do that, all is well.
Yeah.
And then if I'm staying at a fabulous hotel, I order room service. And so I'll end up like getting some delicious like croissant.
Totally.
And, my bacon and eggs. And then be like, I just spent $35 on something that should spend $7. Whatever.
But it's like treating yourself.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Exactly.
Okay, next question. What advice would you give your younger self?
Oh, chill the fuck out. Like, seriously.
That's what I'd say 80% of people have said, though.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Everyone says, like, chill out. Like, it's all going to work out, you know? But it totally makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I think I was so, fear-driven, afraid of failure. Mm-hmm. And so I overcompensated and at work and trying to be perfect. And I'd be like, dude, go have some fun. Like,
right.
It's all going to be fine.
Totally. So, easy to say in hindsight, but harder when you're in it and freaking out.
Totally.
Okay, my next question. Going off of the theme of courage with your book, who is the most courageous person you know?
So I have a couple thoughts on this. I actually, because you did tell me you were going to ask me this question in advance, I brought one of my favorite books, so I don't know if you can see this, but yeah. I think one of the most
But speak to it too, because some people will just be listening.
Okay, so I'm holding up a book called Elizabeth I CEO, and it's Strategic Lessons from the Leader Who Built an Empire. It's by Alan Axelrod. And I think Elizabeth I is one of the most courageous people. I don't know her, but that I know of, because she took over in the middle of the 1500s. England was a total shit show, male-dominated world. It was just, there couldn't have been more negatives and more reasons for her to fail. And she came into the role and into the kingdom and was one of the most impactful leaders ever and built an empire that prospered. And how she did it is fascinating. And so I actually think she had incredible courage. And she totally inspires me. And it's a book you can see, like, I've had this book forever. And for those of you that can see this, I've got little notes and all these different things and things she did. It's just amazing. And then the other courageous people currently, I think everyone who's spoken out in the Me Too movement. I'm really proud of all those people. And I think that there's been a spectrum. And there's a lot of reasons to have a lot of opinions about that whole thing. But I think we're actually living in a time period, Abby, that is so much more courageous than it's been. And those that have not had a voice are speaking out and speaking up and sharing their truth, whether it makes anyone else comfortable or not. And I'm really glad, because much better for us to have courage and truth telling, even if it feels awkward and isn't perfectly packaged, than the absence of it.
Yes, and holding it in for how many years or decades or totally. Exactly. What's next for you? What's your next new exciting thing?
Well, the thing I'm most jazzed about, you already talked about in the intro, but the summit. I've been asked for a couple years now. A lot of people who've read my book, Ab, have been like, we need Mindy Camp. And so the You First Summit is that exact thing, 5-day summit. And
we're not camping.
And we're not camping. We are staying.
I would not be going if it was camp.
Yeah. No. Like, what in the world? No, we're not camping. No, because so this is going to be, my passion is to be able to go deep with these 15 women, but I've already got a waiting list for 2019 on this whole heart, mind, body, spirit concept across 5 days, and give people time and space to step back and reflect and recharge and evaluate what real success looks like for them, wherever they're at and whatever point they're at in their career and their life. And so that is what I'm super excited about. That's my next wave, and I see doing this for the next 20, 25 years. I feel like this is what I'm meant to do.
And can you, for our listeners, kind of describe like the avatar, like who is the perfect person for this summit? So whether it's them or someone they know, they're aware.
So think in terms of age range from 35 to 55. Women, this one is for women, women who are working in some way. And I say that I actually just had a psychiatrist apply to come, Ab,
nice.
which is awesome. So it doesn't matter. You don't have to be a corporate exec like me. You can be an entrepreneur, business owner, psychiatrist. You can be whatever, but you have to be somebody who is all about owning the life that you're creating. And what I mean by that is that you can be the most successful entrepreneur in the world, but I don't want you at you first if you think you've got everything figured out.
Right.
I want you to be a person who's open to learning and growing and transformation, and who wants to take back what you learned to increase your influence and impact in your life in really positive ways. And so the avatar is, most of the women are mothers or have family obligations, have big careers, have a heart for wanting to do all aspects of their life in a much more elevated sense. And that's why you're coming. And that's why I think your participation and collaboration in this is so key, because I'm trying to curate a 5-day experience and bring to bear all the things that I believe have helped change my life. And when it comes to mind, body, spirit integration, the work that you do with your patients and what you're doing is absolutely essential to my well-being and the ability for me to do what I do. And so I want to bring your expertise to the group. And that's why we're collaborating on this, because it's not just about business or career or profession. It's about the whole thing.
Right. Which I love. It's the total holistic experience, because I feel like many retreats, you know, even in like other stuff I'm creating, it's all health and wellness. Right. Or conferences, workshops, summits are all career. This is so unique in that it brings it all together.
That's right. And we are going to delve into the spirit side too.
Yep.
Right. So, because the other thing is, I think that's the idea of meaning and purpose beyond where people are at. People are yearning, Abby, for meaning and purpose, and to feel like how they're spending their time and what they're doing is making a difference. And it's spent, and we can even talk about, I mean, 10 years ago, people couldn't even talk about stuff like this in this way. At least people in my corporate tribe for sure couldn't. And then if you talk about here in meditation or whatever, people were like, ew, and you know, do you whole wheat bread too and like live on an ashram? I mean, it was so crazy. We live in a different world now. It's pretty cool. Right.
But that's where I think from the past couple of years, you've seen that shift directly, because people, they know how you roll. And that's why they wanted Mindy Camp, because they knew it would have like that different twist on it, I feel, coming from your perspective.
Right.
All right, awesome. So last thing, I want you to tell our listeners about the amazing offer you're giving out.
So for those of you who go and buy my book, all you have to do is send in email to info@mindymackenzie.com, a copy of your receipt of your book, and you're going to be entered into a drawing, which my son Noah will probably do. So it will be random. And whoever's selected, you're actually going to get 2 hours of time with me, and we'll do a total life advisory session. Probably, if you want to get the most out of time with me, it'll be about your career and your profession and all of that stuff. But whatever you want to talk about, and I'll spend 2 hours with you on the phone.
Yeah. And so that's amazing. So make sure you order Mindy's book. And like she said, forward the receipt to the email. We'll have listed below all the details. So you guys can enter that. Super valuable. Thank you so much for that. Yeah. So, all right, guys, all the notes, everything we talked about, we'll reference below. Excuse me. How to keep in touch with Mindy, her website, her social media, information about the summit, and her offer. And so I really hope you guys enjoyed this interview, and you can leave comments below and we can relay them to Mindy as well, if you guys would like. All right. Thanks so much, Mindy.
Thanks for having me, Ab.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.